Okay, Mama, today's episode is one I have been so excited to record because we are talking about the stuff nobody warned you about after you have a baby. I sat with Youstina Gerges from A Rise Above Physical Therapy in Wyckoff, New Jersey. She is a pelvic floor physical therapist, and we went there. We talked about why you're still leaking when you sneeze 6 months postpartum, why sex feels nothing like it used to, what diastasis recti actually means for your body, that heavy, dragging feeling in your pelvis that everyone just tells you is normal, and what pelvic organ prolapse really is, and what you can do about it. Here's the thing. So many moms are just white knuckling through these symptoms because they think it's the price of having a baby. It is not. And Youstina is here to tell you exactly that. Let's get into it. So I am super excited to have Youstina Gerges here from A Rise Above Physical Therapy. And she specifically does pelvic floor physical therapy, which I think is so important for you, Mama. So welcome.
Thank you for having me, Ashley. I'm so excited to be on this podcast.
I'm excited for you to tell all the moms out there about what you do because I think it's so important for them to hear how they can take care of their postpartum bodies. So my question here is, what made you get into pelvic floor PT? Where are you located, and everything about your business?
I never actually planned on becoming a pelvic floor physical therapist. When I first graduated, I was treating a lot of chronic low back pain patients, and I found myself really drawn to the more complex patient cases. And it was because it forced me to look beyond why someone was hurting or where they were hurting. I quickly realized that it is rarely the whole story where they were actually hurting. The symptoms don't always point to where the origin is. And so I started my journey I had an amazing coworker at the time who was getting patients out of chronic low back pain in just a few sessions. And so she introduced me to a couple of pelvic floor techniques that she was using. And almost overnight, I started seeing completely different outcomes with my own patients. And so it made me think that there must be something here that I haven't learned about before. So I dove right into it. I took my first pelvic floor course and then another one, and then I found incredible mentors in the field. And that completely changed the way that I view the body. I realized that the pelvis is in the center of everything. And so it influences how we walk, how we breathe, where our stability comes from, how we carry our children, how we exercise. It's connected to the whole body. But the more I learned, the more that I became more frustrated because the environment that I was practicing in at the time did not allow me to bring into it the whole body approach and to really truly treat patients, not just for their symptoms, but to help them with even preventative wellness going forward. And so at the time I was seeing 2 to 3 patients an hour. There really wasn't enough time to really understand why someone was hurting, or the level that pelvic health requires is a lot of hands-on assessment. And I really couldn't do that. And so I remember thinking, this isn't why I became a physical therapist. I didn't go into this profession to just help people temporarily manage symptoms. I wanted to really understand why the symptoms were even there in the first place. And that's where Rise Above was really born from. It was, we want to rise above the standard level of care for every patient that walks through our doors. And so I didn't start the practice because I wanted to own a business. Some people ask me that. I started because I really wanted a kind of place that was different, that I would recommend to my own family members. And so at Rise Above, every patient works with a pelvic health specialist one-on-one the entire hour for the whole visit. We take a whole body approach because we know that your symptoms don't come in isolation. There are definitely other areas of the body that are connected into it. And so sometimes we see that the answer isn't just giving them another exercise to do at home. It's actually looking and breaking down what are their habits. So we look at how they're picking up their toddler 20 times a day. We look at how they're carrying the diaper bag, how they're holding the car seat and putting it in and out of the car. Some simple things like how they stand to wash the dishes at night, if they're completely locking their pelvis and that's why their back is bothering them. And those everyday habits, we see them repeating thousands of times. And so we make that their initial exercise program that they are focusing on. And our goal for them is to really find what's the root cause, not just quiet their symptoms. And so our patients leave not only feeling better, but truly understanding their whole body and feeling more interconnected with it. So today at Rise Above, we actually focus on women's health, men's health, and children's. And so we go to the root cause of all of their symptoms, treating from very early on potty training to all the way through their whole life cycle.
So I'm not afraid to share. I do go to a Rise Above, and I think Youstina and Amelie are fabulous. Her whole entire staff. As soon as you walk in the door, Iman is so friendly and you just get fabulous care. That whole hour is so hands-on, educational, and you really learn about your body and how it works and why it's in pain in certain ways. Just like she said, if you're washing the dishes, I was definitely locking up and causing lower back pain. So they are just phenomenal.
Thank you, Ashley. That's so sweet to hear from you. Thank you.
Yeah. So here's a question that moms might be embarrassed to ask, but it really happens out there. I'm leaking a little when I sneeze, laugh, or jump on the trampoline with my toddler. Is that normal, or should I actually be doing something about it?
I always answer this question in the same exact way because it's one of the biggest misconceptions in women's health. Leakage is incredibly common. It's never normal. Somewhere along the lines, we have normalized it. We joke about it, we wear liners, we stop jumping on the trampoline, we cross our legs every time we sneeze. But those ways of adapting to it actually lead to other problems down the line. They don't allow us to fix why leakage is there in the first place. And so our bodies are incredibly smart. They're going to find anywhere around it to compensate, keep us moving, and doing the things that we love. So those symptoms are telling us that something in the body is not working efficiently. So let's think about sneezing, for instance. When sneezing is happening, there's a big pressure event that's building up in the body. And then all of a sudden, in a split second, that pressure has to get pushed through the abdomen. And if the abdomen is not able to maintain that pressure within it, it's going to escape through the bladder. And that's why we have that leakage is happening due to a weak pelvic floor. Now, sometimes it is due to a weak pelvic floor, but a lot of times we find that it's happening because there is an entire system that's not allowing the pressure to be managed properly. So I like to think of the pelvic floor as basically the basement of your house. So if there is a problem in the basement, you don't automatically blame the basement. You look at the whole structure of the house. The same is true for our bodies. Pregnancy changes the way that we breathe, the position of our rib cage, our posture, our core, and how we move. Then postpartum, we're carrying babies on one hip, we're lifting a car seat up, we're bending over a crib 100 times. Over those times, the movement patterns get harder for the body to manage the pressure within it. So the good news is that leakage is very treatable. Once we understand where it's coming from, we address that root cause, and then patients are able to get rid of it and then manage it on their own as well. I never want someone to think that they will live in a penny liner for the rest of their lives. Even though marketing will make you believe that that's what you want, you deserve to really laugh, sneeze, jump on the trampoline all day long and never worry about leakage.
And you know what? I did learn how to sneeze from you. There's a certain proper way to sneeze. Can you explain that?
Yeah. And so we want the pressure to not go straight downwards into your bladder. And so sometimes we tell our patients to lean forward a little bit. That allows the bladder to move backwards within the pelvis, not allowing full impact from the sneeze directly into their pelvic floor.
Yeah, that's great. Great info.
Yeah.
So, how long after birth should incontinence or leaking last before it's a red flag instead of just postpartum?
I usually tell women that if you're still leaking around 4 weeks postpartum, it's worth having a conversation with a pelvic floor therapist. Your body is still healing in those first 4 weeks. So we want to give it a little bit of time, but we also don't want to wait months hoping that it'll magically go away on its own, because it typically doesn't. The earlier that we identify why we're having leakage, the better, because as time goes on, again, our body's really going to adapt to our movements. There are things that we're just going to kind of start to do without really thinking about it, like putting a liner in, or start to just in case pee, where we pee before we leave any place, and then also once we enter any place. So those are the little habits that we start to do and build up. And so the good news is that leakage is treatable, and addressing it often makes recovery so much easier. That being said, if you are listening to this podcast and your youngest child is 5, 10, or even 20 years old, don't think you missed the opportunity. We work with women in all stages of life. Our bodies are incredibly adaptable. There are so many muscles within the pelvic floor that we can change the way that they function.
They're definitely adaptable, because from where I began to where I am now is incredible. You guys have made wonders on me, And like she says, it's all stages of life. I didn't immediately go right after having my kids due to other health issues. So like my pelvic floor was on the back burner for a while, but I knew I needed to be seen. So, I waited until my youngest was 9 years old to go and see you. So it's never too late. Sex still hurts months or even years postpartum. Is that normal, and when should I get help?
Great question. I wish more women knew that painful sex after having a baby is common, but it isn't something that we should live without. So one of the hardest parts about the conversation of sexual health is that a lot of us don't bring it early on to our providers, that we are having pain with intercourse. We think it's just us. It's something that's very private, intimate. So there isn't a care provider that you're having this conversation with early on. A lot of women think too, well, I just had a baby, this might be my new norm. So they start to push through the pain or try to avoid intimacy or assume that time will eventually fix it. What this does is it creates a pain pattern with their nervous system. So intercourse was supposed to be a pleasurable experience. Now their body sees it as a painful experience, and it starts a pain cycle. So for women that are experiencing this, it could be something as small as like their partner putting their hands on their back and their whole pelvic floor will guard up, because the brain has said, this is something that no longer brings me pleasure, it brings me pain. And that grows with time, leading them to more pelvic pain with inserting a tampon, with pelvic exams, things that they may not have had pain with prior.
That makes complete sense.
Yeah.
What is diastasis recti? How do I check myself for it? And what should I avoid doing? Planks, crunches until it's healed.
I actually think diastasis recti gets talked about in a way that's a little bit misleading. Most people focus on the gap between the abdominal muscles, but the gap itself isn't what concerns us the most. We're very much looking at and interested in how the core is functioning. So during pregnancy, your abdominal muscles naturally separate, and they separate in two ways, upwards and out to the side. And that completely changes the way that the muscles function together. So almost every woman will experience this to some degree starting at 35 weeks of pregnancy. The question isn't so much if you have a gap, how big is the gap, or do you even have a gap, right? We want to see, can your abdominal wall generate tension and support you in the way that it's supposed to? So the simple checks that you see online of, putting your hand down the midline, trying to pick up your head, seeing if you feel anything or any gap there, gives some information, but not all the information. So the information we're looking for, can the muscles separate from each other and then come back in when we're trying to create the tension? How deep is that gap? And what does pressure look like when it's trying to come through the core? So we can have two different women with the same exact gap, but they function very differently. And so for one, we may not be saying like avoid planks or crunches. We might be saying more of, for one, you can do a plank because that's what your core actually needs. And then for the other one, we're saying, okay, no, you can't do planks or crunches. There isn't one exercise that's bad for everyone, is what I want to say. I've had patients who aren't really ready for planks yet, and I've had others that are, the plank is exactly what they needed. So sometimes getting out of bed, lifting a laundry basket creates more pressure than a properly formed plank. So we get the question a lot of like, what exercise is bad, what exercise is good. We encourage women to really see, can your body manage pressure in this exercise? And we give them signs to look for. So they're looking for coning, they're looking for doming, they're looking to feel do they feel any pain if they're in a specific position or sensitivity within their abdomen. We want to prepare their body always for movement. We want them to feel confident picking up their child, going to the grocery store, doing those high-level exercises with confidence that they're not going to damage their core in any way because their bodies are incredibly resilient.
I love the fact that you said every woman's different, and a plank might be okay for one and not the other, because there's so much misinformation out there on the internet or even like Instagram or TikTok saying you shouldn't do this or that. So to have an informed, person saying this, that's great. What does pelvic heaviness or prolapse actually feel like, and how do I know if that's what I'm experiencing?
I think the word prolapse can sound very scary when someone's hearing it for the first time, but it's important to know that it's much more common than most people realize. It exists in a spectrum. So there are 4 different grades of prolapse. Women describe it in many different ways. Some say it feels like sitting on a golf ball. Some say it feels like heaviness, fullness, or a sensation that something is falling out. For some, it could be that they notice a bulge that wasn't there before, or simply that they just feel different at the end of the day. One of the things that we hear a lot is, I feel fine in the morning, but by the evening, I start to feel heavy. And that's because prolapse is a symptom that's often influenced by gravity, fatigue, and how much pressure the body has to manage throughout the day. So the good news is that those symptoms don't automatically mean that you need prolapse surgery. Just like leakage, prolapse isn't about the pelvic floor. It's about how your entire body manages your pressure. So your breathing, your posture, your core, your hips, the way that you move all influences the support that your pelvic organs are receiving constantly. So one of the things we really want women to know is that the prolapse is a diagnosis, not the end of their story. I see so many women who become terrified after hearing that word, but for many people, symptoms improve when we address the underlying movement pattern and help the body to manage the pressure more effectively. So if they're experiencing heaviness, pressure, or even feeling that something's off, that just doesn't feel quite right, we want women not to ignore it, because prolapse can progress. But also at the same time, do not panic if you hear it from your doctor. It does not also mean that you have to have surgery. It's worth getting evaluated for so that we know the true grading. We also sometimes will have our patients in different positions so we can truly see how is the body handling the pressure when they're in a squat, when they are standing, when they're trying to lift something from the ground. And that gives us a much better assessment of which organ it is and how low the organ is coming down within their pelvic floor.
Do I really need pelvic floor PT, even if I had a C-section, or is it just for vaginal deliveries?
Absolutely. A C-section changes how the body is delivered, but it doesn't erase everything that your body went through during the pregnancy. So your pelvic floor is still supported growing a baby for 9 months. Your abdominal wall was still stretched, your rib cage changed its position, and your posture adapted. And on top of all of that, you recovered from a major abdominal surgery. And so whether someone delivers via C-section or a vaginal delivery, we want to ask the question of, how is your body healing afterwards? Because the 6-week check-in that you have with your doctor is not enough. It doesn't even scratch the surface of the different muscles that were involved in the process of going from pregnancy to postpartum. Now, with a C-section, we actually at Rise Above have a specific C-section postpartum program that we start with our moms very early on, as early as 4 weeks postpartum, because there's a lot of scar tissue from the C-section scar that's connected back into their pelvic floor. And so we start with first at the abdomen, at the abdominal line. We also have a nerve that was cut through for the C-section that we want to start to bring back sensation to so that they don't have numbness in that area. I've had a C-section myself, so I completely understand how scary it is afterwards. A lot of moms don't want to touch their C-section scar. It's really hard to even look at it and connect back with it. The mind understands that, and so the more that the body ignores that area, the more that it actually forgets about that part of the core. And so it starts to think that the muscles right underneath the rib cage are the only core that the body has. And it overuses that area and stops to use your stability pelvic floor muscles. And what that ends up doing is it creates a lot of low back pain, hip pain, things that we see later on in life. And it's all coming from the restriction of their C-section scar and from the body literally ignoring that area of the body because it caused so much early pain. There's sometimes trauma that's linked to C-sections as well.
I mean, that's so interesting, but it makes total sense. You know, when you have a C-section, you're going through so many layers of muscle, right?
Right, absolutely. 7 different layers.
Okay, so if I was a woman who, you know, just had a baby, what can I start doing today, postpartum, whether I'm 6 weeks or 3 years out, to start healing, even without a referral?
The first thing I'd say is don't wait until things get worse before you decide that your body is worth taking care of. Healing doesn't have an expiration date. And so whether you have a baby 6 weeks ago or 6 years ago, your body's always adapting. And so one of the earliest places to start is to become aware of how your body's moving throughout the whole day. So how you're picking up your child, how you are, if you're holding them on the same hip the entire time, how you're breathing when you lift something heavy off the ground. Those little habits matter more than people realize, because we repeat them hundreds of times throughout the day, the week. Those little habits also build over time. And so I always encourage women to keep moving. Walking is a wonderful thing to do. Gentle strength training is wonderful. Our bodies thrive on movement and our joints need it for good lubrication. And so the most important thing is do not ignore any early symptoms that you have. That is your body's call for help to pay attention to that area. It's not just being a part of being a mom. There are a lot of things that correlate to that, but this is something that our body's telling us pay attention to so that it does not build into leakage, pain, heaviness, abdominal wall weakness. It's all a part of the body saying, help me to heal.
Yeah, I love that you said, like, your body's saying, help me. And I feel like we get really real on this podcast, and I always like share my health stories and journeys. And I want to give you just advice of advocating for yourself. Don't be embarrassed. Don't be shy. You know, like Youstina said, many women go through all of these issues. So, you know, the doctors have heard it before. You're not the only one. You can say, hey, you know, I jumped on the trampoline and I had leakage. They've heard it a million times already, you know. So just be your biggest advocate and get help early on. Youstina is located in Wyckoff, New Jersey. So if you're in northern New Jersey, call her, get evaluated, go see her. You know, she also has an Instagram account where she shares a lot of information. And even if you get on her email list, she has wonderful informational emails. Like recently, she just emailed about PCOS and how it's not PCOS anymore. They changed the name, and you know, there's so many criteria, and I love seeing her emails because she really educates women and it's so empowering. But if they're not in the Wyckoff area, what can they do?
Okay, so you can go to pelvicrehab.com, which will point you to a local pelvic floor physical therapist in your area. So that is a way of finding another local practitioner to you. I want moms to know that motherhood changes your body, but it doesn't mean that you have to settle for those symptoms. Somewhere along the way, we convince women that leakage is normal, that back pain is normal, that painful intercourse is normal. And feeling disconnected with your body is actually a part of being a mom. And that's the biggest lie that I don't want anyone to believe. Your body is incredibly resilient. It carried, it delivered, it continues to care for another human being every day, and that's remarkable. It deserves care, and I always tell my patients that you spend so much time taking care of everyone else, but your children benefit from having a mom who feels strong, healthy, confident in her own body. So if something doesn't feel right, don't ignore it. Don't wait until you've earned the right to ask for help. And maybe the biggest message that I'd leave you with is this, that your symptoms are not your identity. They are information. And when we listen to them, instead of pushing them off, we give ourselves the opportunity to truly heal. And that's something that every mom deserves.
That statement was so powerful and like gave me chills because it's right. Like I have shared on past podcasts, I have pushed my symptoms aside. I just thought it was motherhood for the longest time. And you really have to follow your gut. And I agree, you can't pour from an empty cup. You know, you need to be the best to take care of others. So, you know, put yourself first. Don't feel selfish for doing that. Is there anything else that you'd like to share?
We are here to help everyone who is not even local to us. So if you are not sure who to pick or who's the best provider to go to, we have a couple of signs that we look for in a pelvic floor therapist that truly values the whole body one-on-one approach. We're happy to guide you through it, even if you're not in the local area. You can call our office or email us. We're here to answer any questions that you have. We believe that everyone deserves a true pelvic health assessment that looks at them, doesn't look at their symptom, looks at them as a whole body. And so we're happy to guide you. Reach out to us and we'll answer any questions that you have.
And she's so right because obviously she's a professional in this area. However, before I found Youstina, I went to another physical therapist. They said that they did pelvic floor, and I had gone there and they were making me do the wrong exercises, and I actually felt worse than better. And then thankfully I went to Youstina and I was on the right track and everything, but they're not all the same.
Yeah, you're looking for someone who does an internal exam. You're looking for someone who looks at your nervous system. We do a lot of in our office of visceral work, which basically means that we work on your organs from the abdominal side. So if someone is having a lot of GI symptoms that connect back into their pelvic floor, you're looking for someone who is connecting that back into your symptom and what the root cause is. One of the questions we tell patients if they're moving to like another state and they're trying to find somebody else in their local area, we tell them, ask your therapist, can they find the root cause? Can they explain that to you? And that is truly what you need. You need to know where is the origin that the symptoms are coming from, and are we diving down deeper into that origin to get you the results that last for a long time, not just a couple of weeks and your symptoms are back.
Yeah. And I had shared that Amelie during Christmas time when I was under high stress mode, she had worked a lot on teaching me nervous system and vagus nerve moves. So, you know, absolutely. It's just a wonderful, wonderful place. So where can they find you? On Instagram, online?
Yeah, we have an Instagram page, Rise Above PT NJ. They can go there. We share a lot of info there. They can also sign up for our newsletter, which goes out 1 to 2 times a month about a specific pelvic health topic that they can learn more about. We also do a couple of community events that they are more than welcome to come to. We do it to spread pelvic health awareness within our area. We also do a couple of online offerings, so they can go to our website. Those will be announced shortly. So our website is riseabovept.com.
That's so exciting. I love that.
Thank you.
All right. It's honestly a pleasure having you.
Thank you. It was great speaking with you, Ashley.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, how good was that conversation? If you are postpartum, whether that's 6 weeks or 6 years, and you have been dealing with any of the things we talked about today, please know that you don't have to just live with it. There is help and it works. If you're in the New Jersey area, you can find Youstina and her team at A Rise Above Physical Therapy in Wyckoff. I'll have all her links in the show notes, so go check her out. And if this episode hit close to home, will you do me a favor and share it with a mama friend who needs to hear it? Because this is exactly the kind of conversation that needs to be happening. And it starts with us passing it along. I'll see you next week. Take care of yourself, all of yourself.